I think Monday I recorded in B block, so a lot of times I forget into B block. All right, so we should at this point have our I can down. Today is all about understanding the meaning of the graph rather than just its components, all right? So here we go. Before we get started, I want to kind of brainstorm for a moment. I want us to kind of just forget about math for a second, forget about graphing, and just go back to some definitions. Now, my virtual people, I'm going to ask that you not throw anything in the chat quite yet. We want to give everybody some time to think. But I want you on your paper, there's a section for you to write down some ideas where it says think about it. And I want you to answer some of these questions. So what does it mean to be dependent? So just brainstorm, what does that word mean? If I say you're dependent, what does that mean? And then also, where maybe have you heard this term before? Right, so I'll give everybody about 40-ish seconds to brainstorm those two questions, and then I'll be calling on some people to explain their thoughts. What does it mean to be dependent, and where have we heard this term before? All right, hopefully that was enough time for you guys to formulate an idea here. Ayana, can you turn on your mic and tell me, what does it mean to be dependent? Ayana, what does it mean to be dependent? Not in math, just in life. Turn on your mic and tell me what that word means to you. All right, let's hear from Anthony. Sure, tell me what you think.
All right, so being dependent is like, you feel me, like you depend on something in your life. You feel me, like you depend on something.
Okay, I see where you're going. Can you try and explain it without using the word in the definition, though? Is there some other word other than depend? Maybe. I love what you said. You're right, but...
All right, hold up. I'm going to have to search my documents real quick to see if I can find another word.
Hold on. I might got some. Hold on.
Do you have maybe a situation where you've depended on someone or someone has depended on you, Anthony?
Nah, that's not me. I'm INDEPENDNT. You feel me?
Okay, so maybe we can just say it's the opposite of independent. Because Anthony said he's not dependent on anybody. He's independent. Cool. I like that. Let's hear from somebody in class. I think, Keandre, did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Yeah, what did you say? And then I'll switch gears over here.
What do you mean to be dependent?
Yeah, or where have you heard this term before? Either question.
I heard the term, like,
Miss, can I help Anthony out?
Give me 1 second. Anthony did great. I'm listening to Keandre in class, Trayvon, and then you can add on. You said you heard it what?
I said I thought about dependent very.
Yeah, so maybe if you are in or you have taken biology, this is something that you're definitely you've been exposed to. You're going to cover. Mr. Russell and I, we work very close in this concept, so this is something that you're going to see across both of our subjects. Jasmine, I love that you added this thing. You say you rely on someone or something. Yes, beautiful. Okay. Anybody else want to add on? Yeah, Maddie.
So, like, if you look at, like, hearing this term, you think about, like, children, because children like need their parents, like they need to like make food for them and everything. And then you can also think of like, I just thought of this and I was thinking that like firefighters can't have a job without an emergency, so like they need like emergencies to like be able to like work and stuff and do what they do to protect everyone else and everything.
So maybe we could say like a broad statement, like for your job, you need like you need that field of work. Nice. Okay. So for those of you that are virtual and couldn't hear, Maddie first started off by saying that like children are dependent on their parents. So that's maybe where we've heard that before. And then also like in order for you to have a job, you're dependent that situation is happening. So like she gave the example for firefighters, there needs to be a fire. Otherwise, they're not going to have a job. Lillian in the back.
Like trust somebody, like you can only depend on them in a crisis.
Yeah, you can trust someone or something. All right, I love all the answers here. You guys are doing great. Abby, you say you're not reliant. Well, that's good. Maybe you're more of an independent person. That's not a bad thing. So another place we might have heard this, and you guys will hear in your life, is has anybody heard of dependence when we talk about like taxes? You guys have never filed taxes, but your parents have. And when you file for a tax return, it's going to ask if you have any dependents. And that goes kind of back to Maddie's idea with children and parents. So what that's asking is, do you have anybody that relies on you? And if so, based on how many dependents you have or how many people that rely on you, you might get a bigger tax return. So it does come into play in life. And what I want to do today is really focus on this definition, because in math, we really didn't change this definition too much. When I talk about dependent, I'm still talking about something that relies on something else, or something that it needs something else to function. All right, so let's talk about our math definitions here. Thank you to all of you that gave me some good examples. That was great. We have two big vocab words. If you are writing this on a separate sheet of paper at home, feel free to paraphrase. Our first one says the input value of a function, something that does not depend on anything else. So we go back here to Abby and Anthony, who said that they don't depend on anything else, and they are independent here. And maybe some of you guys are as well, but we have an independent variable. And what that means is that it does not depend on anything else. No matter what, it is still going to exist. It is not going to change based on any other factors. Make sure we're getting this down. Thank you. That means that our second definition is going to be, what do you guys think? Thank you. It's going to be dependent variable. And that is when we do depend on something else. So, I don't know, we'll see a couple examples in a moment, but it needs something else in order to function the way that it's going to function, or in order to measure what we want to measure. Right, so independent and dependent variables are our two big things. I'm going to give everybody about 15 seconds just to make sure that they have it down, and then I'll go on to the next frame here. Tell your sister thank you. You like the dog? I like the dog too. Alrighty, so here we go. We're going to move on to our very first example here. All right, now I'm going to be honest with you guys. When I found these graphs, I didn't make them myself. I literally Google searched some real life graphs. I'm not going to lie to you. Otherwise it's too time consuming. And when I did that, there are actually less results than one would think in Google Images. So this red line was on our graph today. Ignore the red line. Okay, it's not relevant to what we're doing today. You are just looking at the blue line on our graph, okay, the diagonal one on your notes, okay? So let's go through. We're going to identify some components, and this is basically how it's going to look on your assessment. I'm going to give you a graph, and then I'm going to say, identify all these things and tell me what they mean, all right? So our independent variable, let's first talk about what this graph is saying. We are talking about the number of pages someone is reading over a certain time frame. So this graph is showing how many pages we're reading, okay? And it's showing that by measuring two things. We are measuring time and we are measuring the number of pages read. So between those two measurements, time and the number of pages read, we need to decide which one is the independent and which one is the dependent variable. So I'm going to give everybody about 20 seconds just to brainstorm which one of those between time and number of pages is independent. It does not depend on anything else. Everybody about 20 seconds and I'll call on somebody to give me an answer. Which one of those would be independent?
Ma'am.
You can, I mean, you can close your laptop. I have it up if you want. That's okay. All right, between our two options, Naomi, can you tell me which one you think is our independent variable between our two units of measure on our graph? Which one is independent? Okay, turn on your mic and explain to me why you think that.
Is it because time can change
Okay,
over a matter of time?
Time does change and it can change, you're right. But when time changes, does time go faster or slower dependent on anything else? Naomi? No. So time does continue going, but it's not going to change based on anything else. So that's actually going to put time as the independent variable. And that's okay, I put you on the spot. So we're going to put time as our independent variable and we're going to remember that our units are hours. Units are important in these context problems. Which means that your dependent variable then must be the number of pages. Make sure you're getting this down because you guys are going to have to do one like this by yourself in a moment. Make sure we're getting this down. All right, so I'm going to give you guys a little trick. And maybe you've seen or heard this trick in biology, I'm not sure. But in math, you can always ask yourself which one is dependent of the other. And that's a way to determine which one's independent and which one's dependent. The other way, and this is kind of a trick, is that your independent variable is always the x-axis. So that's a big giveaway here. Whatever your x-axis is labeled as, that's going to be your independent every single time. Okay. Then that means that your dependent variable is always going to be the y-axis. So when you're trying to decide between the two, look at what both of your axes are labeled as. And then based on that, you can determine what your variables are going to be. All right, now the last two are a little bit trickier. I'm not going to lie to you. Okay, for these two, you're not only going to have to find me the values, you're also going to have to explain them to me. So let's talk about the y-intercept meaning at first. All right, we want to first pick out our y-intercept. Well, let's look at our y-axis. I need to figure out where our blue line is crossing that y-axis. So does anybody have a value for me what our y-intercept would be here? Where it crosses? Yeah.
0.
0, 0. Yeah, thank you. And I got it in the chat as well. Our line is crossing at the origin, 0, 0. So that's our y-intercept, but I don't want just that. I also want the meaning. So for that, you're going to want to go back to the title of your graph. Remember that we're talking about the number of pages read over a certain amount of time. So if our values are both 0 and 0, then we can say for our meaning that at time 0, 0 pages have been read. I know it seems silly, but I need to know in context, what are we talking about? And you might not phrase it exactly the way that I did. You could say something like, at the start time, we've read 0 pages, or when we started, I don't know, tracking, something along those lines. As long as it has the same meaning and you include the values, we're cool with it. So now let's look at our slope. Our slope is probably the hardest of them all. So I really need you all to tune in. For our slope, the key is to look at one little box at a time. All right, all my in-class people, focus, you ready? So the key for slope is to look at one little box at a time. So what I would do is I would mark the beginning point at one box and the ending point at one little grid box. And just like before, we're going to still count the rise over the run. So looking at my two little dots, I need to decide what my rise and my run is. Well, if I look, you'll notice that we're not counting by ones on our y-axis. What are we counting by here, you guys? I know you guys know I'm giving think time. What are we counting by on our y-axis? If you know it, throw it in the chat. What am I counting by? Yes, thank you, Amara. We're counting by 25s. Is that what you guys were going to say as well? Okay, awesome. Thank you. So each of these little tick marks is 25. So if I look my rise, I'm not going up the full 25 there. I would say somewhere between 21 and 24, I would take as a good answer. I'm going to put 23. And those we're talking about pages. That's labeled on our y-axis. And then our run, we're going over. Now, if we look at our x-axis, those are marked by we're counting by ones here. So our x-axis is going to be 1, and in our units, we have hour. Okay, so that's my actual slope. I still need the meaning, though. Does anybody have an idea, maybe looking at our slope, what our meaning might be? What that would mean in context? Go back to your title of your graph. What? Yeah, so our title of our graph, we're talking about the number of pages. So if we have the slope 23 over 1, what might that mean? Oh, thank you, Amara, for throwing that in chat. Let's see if our in-class people agree. Yeah, so you guys worded it both a little bit differently, but it means the same thing. We read 23 pages are read each hour. Or you could say for every 1 hour, we read 23 pages. Or you read 23 pages an hour. You read 23 pages per hour. And you could even throw 1 in there if you want to be very specific. Can I get, in class, can you give me a thumbs up, thumbs down? And then virtual, can you give me a good, bad, Tell me how you're feeling. Cool. Couple greats, couple goods. Some thumbs sideways, some thumbs up. All right, I'm going to stop recording now.